Blood pooled beneath his body. His radio was gone. His gun was gone. And the man who shot him had left him here to die alone. Sergeant Daniel Harrow clawed at the frozen earth, dragging himself inch by inch, knowing it was pointless. The bullet had done its job. The cold would finish the rest. Then he heard footsteps, small ones, and a dog's bark cutting through the silence. Two faces appeared above him, 7 years old, terrified but refusing to run. "We're not leaving you," the boy said, pressing his tiny hands against the wound. "You're not allowed to die." The impossible had just begun. Subscribe now and stay until the end. Drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story reaches. The gunshot had echoed through the mountains exactly 17 minutes ago. Sergeant Daniel Harrow knew this because he had been counting seconds between breaths, counting the fading beats of his own heart, counting the moments he had left before the cold finished what the bullet had started. His fingers clawed at the frozen earth, dragging his body another inch forward, then another. The pain in his side screamed with every movement, but he couldn't stop. Stopping meant dying, and dying meant Marcus Cole would win. "Come on," he whispered to himself. "Move." But his arms gave out. His face pressed into the frost-covered ground, and for the first time in his 34 years, Daniel Harrow felt something he had never allowed himself to feel. Defeat. He thought of his daughter, Lily, 6 years old when the cancer took her. He remembered her small hand in his, her voice asking if heaven had playgrounds. He had promised her he would be brave. He had promised her Daddy would keep fighting. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he breathed. Daddy tried. His eyes began to close. 300 yards away, a German shepherd's ears shot straight up. Ranger stopped mid-stride, his entire body going rigid. His nose lifted to the wind, and a low whine escaped his throat. "Ranger, come on!" Ethan Fairbanks called, his small voice cutting through the morning silence. "We got to get back before Grandma wakes up." But the dog didn't move. His amber eyes locked onto something in the distance, and his whine grew more urgent. Emma Fairbanks tugged her brother's sleeve. "Something's wrong with him. He probably smells a deer or something." Ethan pulled his jacket tighter. It was his father's old jacket, too big, too worn, but he refused to take it off. Even after Dad left. Especially after Dad left. Ranger suddenly bolted. "Ranger, no!" Ethan shouted. The dog ignored him completely, disappearing into the thick trees with a speed that made the 7-year-old's heart drop. Emma grabbed her brother's hand. "We have to follow him." Grandma said, "Stay on the trail. Ranger never runs off. Never." Emma's brown eyes were wide with worry. "Something's really wrong, Ethan." The twins looked at each other. In that silent exchange lived 7 years of shared fears, shared secrets, shared promises. They had come into this world together 8 minutes apart, and they had faced everything together since. Ethan nodded once. They ran. The forest swallowed them quickly. Branches grabbed at their clothes. Frost crunched beneath their boots. Emma's lungs burned from the cold air, but she didn't slow down. She could hear Ranger barking now, sharp, urgent barks that sounded almost human in their desperation. "There," Ethan pointed. They burst through a cluster of pines and stopped dead. Ranger stood over a man's body, barking and pawing at the ground. The man lay crumpled against a fallen log, his uniform soaked dark with something that made Emma's stomach turn. Blood. So much blood. "Oh no," Emma whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." Ethan's face went white. His feet felt frozen to the ground. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get away, to pretend they had never seen this. But then the man moved. Just barely. Just a twitch of his fingers. A flutter of his eyelids. He was alive. "He's alive!" Ethan's voice cracked. "Emma, he's alive!" Emma couldn't move. Her legs had turned to stone and tears were already streaming down her cheeks. "There's so much blood, Ethan. There's so much—" "Stop!" Ethan grabbed his sister's shoulders and forced her to look at him. "Stop. Remember what Grandpa said?" Emma blinked. "What?" "Heroes don't run from people who need help. They run toward them." Ethan's chin trembled, but his voice steadied. "We have to help him, Emma. We have to try. The man's eyes opened, pale blue, clouded with pain, struggling to focus. He saw the children standing over him and confusion flickered across his face. Kids, his voice was barely a rasp. You need to run. Ethan dropped to his knees beside him. We're not running anywhere, mister. We're gonna help you. No, you don't understand. The man tried to lift his hand, but it fell back. They'll come back. Who? Emma knelt on the other side, her tears still falling but her hands steady. Who did this to you? The man's eyes rolled. He was fading. Hey! Ethan shook his shoulder. Hey, stay awake. You gotta stay awake. Ranger pressed his body against the man's legs, sharing his warmth, whimpering softly. The dog understood somehow. He knew exactly what was at stake. Emma pulled out the old flip phone Grandma made them carry. Her fingers shook so badly she could barely open it. I'm calling 911, she said. Hurry! Ethan was already stripping off his jacket, Dad's jacket, and pressing it against the wound in the man's side. The blood soaked through, instantly warm and wet against his small hands. His stomach lurched, but he didn't pull away. Grandpa was a firefighter, he said more to himself than anyone. He saved people. He taught Mom. Mom taught me. I can do this. I can do this. The man's eyes found him. Something like wonder flickered through the pain. How old are you? He managed. 7. Ethan pressed harder. And I'm not letting you die, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. Emma's hands trembled as she pressed the phone to her ear. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man. Emma's words tumbled out in a rush. He's hurt really bad, he's bleeding everywhere, and we're in the woods and we don't know what to do, and please, please, you have to help. Okay, sweetheart, I need you to calm down. The dispatcher's voice was steady, warm. Can you tell me where you are? We're near. Emma looked around frantically. Ethan, where are we? The South Ridge Trail, Ethan called. Tell them Whispering Pines South Ridge may be a 1/4 mile off the main path. Emma repeated it, her voice still shaking. Okay, honey, help is on the way, but it's going to take some time to reach you. Can you tell me about the injured person? He's a policeman, I think. He's wearing a uniform. There's a badge. Emma's voice broke. There's so much blood. Where is he bleeding from? His side. His stomach, maybe. My brother is pressing on it. That's very good. That's exactly what you should do. Keep pressure on the wound. Is the man conscious? Emma looked at the sergeant. His eyes were open, but barely. His lips were turning blue. Kind of. He keeps trying to close his eyes. You need to keep him awake, sweetheart. Talk to him. Ask him questions. Don't let him fall asleep. Okay. Emma crawled closer to the man's face. Hey, mister. What's your name? The man's eyes struggled to focus on her. Daniel, he whispered. Daniel Harrow. Hi, Daniel. I'm Emma. That's my brother Ethan. And that's our dog Ranger. She sniffled and wiped her nose with her sleeve. You gotta stay awake, okay? The lady on the phone says you gotta stay awake. Daniel's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Bossy. For a little kid. I'm 7, Emma said firmly. That's not that little. Yeah. Got a daughter. His eyes went distant. Had a daughter. She was 6. Something cold that had nothing to do with the weather settled in Emma's chest. Daniel didn't answer. His eyes started to close again. Hey. Emma grabbed his hand and squeezed hard. Hey, no, don't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Stay with me. On the other side of Daniel's body, Ethan was losing the battle. Blood kept seeping through Dad's jacket, soaking his fingers, pooling beneath the man's body. No matter how hard he pressed, it wouldn't stop. Come on, come on, come on, he muttered. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. When the bleeding won't stop, you need to apply pressure at the right angle. And sometimes, son, you need something to twist. A tourniquet can save a life. A tourniquet. He needed something to twist. Ethan's eyes landed on a fallen branch. Thick, sturdy, about a foot long. His hands were slick with blood, but he grabbed it anyway. "Emma, give me your scarf." "What?" "Your scarf. The one Grandma made quick." Emma unwound the thick wool scarf from her neck and tossed it over. Ethan's hands worked from memory lessons taught in their tiny kitchen, back when Mom still had time to teach them things. He wrapped the scarf tight around Daniel's torso just above the wound, then used the stick to twist it tighter. Tighter. The blood flow slowed. Daniel gasped in pain. "What are you doing?" "Saving your life," Ethan said through gritted teeth. "So stop complaining." Ranger barked once as if in agreement. Though, the dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. "Emma? Emma, are you still there?" "I'm here." Emma pressed the phone harder against her ear. "Rescue teams are en route, but you're in a very remote area. It's going to be at least 30 minutes before they can reach you. Can you keep doing what you're doing?" 30 minutes. Emma's heart sank. She looked at Daniel at the blue tinge spreading across his lips at the way his breaths came shallow and ragged. 30 minutes might as well be 30 years. "We'll try," she said. "You're doing so well, sweetheart, both of you. Can you tell me more about the injury? Does it look like a knife wound, an accident?" Emma looked at the torn fabric of Daniel's uniform, at the blackened edges around the hole in his side. "I think," she swallowed hard, "I think somebody shot him." Silence on the other end. "Emma, I need you to listen very carefully. Is there anyone else around? Can you see anyone in the woods?" Emma's eyes darted to the trees, shadows everywhere. Any one of them could be hiding something, someone. "I don't know," she whispered. "I can't tell." "Okay. I'm alerting the sheriff's department. You and your brother stay with the injured man, but if you see anyone approaching that makes you uncomfortable, you hide. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Help is coming, Emma. You're being incredibly brave. Just hold on." The line went silent but stayed connected. Emma set the phone down beside her and turned back to Daniel. His eyes were closed. "No." She grabbed his face with both hands. "Wake up. Wake up right now." His eyelids fluttered open. "Still here. Still. You have to stay awake. You have to tell me things. Tell me about your daughter. Tell me about Lily." Something flashed in Daniel's eyes. Pain, but not from the wound. A deeper pain. An older one. "How do you know her name? You said it before, when you were fading out." Emma stroked his cold cheek with her small hand. "Was she nice? I bet she was nice." Daniel's throat worked. For a moment, Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Then slowly words came. "She was the best thing that ever happened to me." "What did she like?" "Everything." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Dancing in rain, butterflies. She asked if heaven had playgrounds. Asked me to be brave." Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "She sounds like she was really special." "She was." Daniel's eyes locked onto hers. "You remind me of her. Same bossy, little attitude." "I'm not bossy," Emma protested. "I'm determined. Grandma says there's a difference." Daniel almost laughed. Almost. "Smart Grandma." "The smartest. She makes the best cookies too. When you get better, I'll bring you some. The chocolate chip ones. They're my favorite." Daniel's hand found hers. Cold, weak, but there. "Deal," he whispered. Ethan's arms were shaking. He had been holding pressure for what felt like hours, but the blood kept coming. Slower now thanks to the makeshift tourniquet, but still coming. Dad's jacket was ruined. His hands were stained red. His whole body ached. But he didn't let go. "You're doing good," Daniel murmured, his eyes finding the boy. "Real good." "I'm scared," Ethan admitted. The words came out before he could stop them. "I've never seen this much blood before." "It's okay to be scared." Daniel's voice was getting weaker. "Brave doesn't mean not scared. Means scared. but doing it anyway. Ethan's chin wobbled. That's what Grandpa used to say. Was he a firefighter? Yeah, he died before we were born, but Mom tells us stories. Ethan blinked hard. He saved 12 people from a building fire, even though he was hurt, even though he could barely walk. He kept going back in until he didn't come out. Daniel was quiet for a moment, then sounds a real hero. Mom says heroes aren't special people. They're just regular people who make hard choices when nobody else will. Your mom sounds wise. Ethan laughed bitterly. She's tired. Dad left 2 years ago. She works all the time. We barely see her. Not her fault. Life is hard. I know. Ethan pressed harder on the wound. That's why I have to be strong. For Emma, for Grandma, for Mom. Somebody has to be. Daniel's heart cracked. Looking at this 7-year-old boy with blood on his hands and determination in his eyes, he saw something he had lost 2 years ago. Hope. You're already strong, kid, he said. Stronger than you know. The Ranger suddenly lifted his head. His ears swiveled. His body tensed. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Both twins froze. What is it, boy? Ethan whispered. Ranger's growl deepened, his eyes fixed on a cluster of trees about 50 yards away. Something was moving in the shadows. Emma grabbed Daniel's arm. He said they might come back. He said, shh. Ethan's voice was barely audible. Stay quiet. They listened. The forest seemed to hold its breath with them. Footsteps. Faint. Measured. Someone was walking through the trees. Ranger's hackles rose. He positioned himself between the children and the approaching sound his teeth bared. Good boy, Ethan breathed. Good boy, stay. The footsteps grew closer. Closer. A figure emerged from the trees and stopped. It was a man. Tall, uniformed, wearing a park ranger's vest. His face was hidden beneath the brim of his hat. Well, well, he said slowly. What do we have here? Ethan's blood ran cold. Something about the man's voice made every alarm in his body scream. Daniel's eyes went wide. Marcus. The man pushed back his hat, revealing a hard face with cold eyes and a thin smile. Hello, Daniel. I thought I finished you. Deputy Marcus Cole stepped closer, and Ranger's barking reached a fever pitch. Interesting, Marcus said, eyeing the dog. Failed K9, if I'm not mistaken. Never could follow orders, could he? His gaze shifted to the twins. And look at this, 2 little heroes, playing rescue in the big bad woods. Emma pressed closer to her brother. Who are you? Nobody important, sweetheart. Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. Just a concerned citizen who happened to be in the neighborhood. You shot him, Ethan said. The words came out flat, certain. You're the one who shot him. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Kids say the darndest things. Don't touch them. Daniel tried to move, but his body wouldn't cooperate. They're just children. Oh, I know exactly what they are. Witnesses. Marcus sighed as if this were all terribly inconvenient. You know, Daniel, this could have been so simple. You could have stayed in town, done your job, looked the other way like everyone else. Couldn't do that. No, you never could. Marcus shook his head. Your father was the same way, that stubborn Harrow pride. It got him killed 20 years ago, and now it's going to get you killed too. Daniel's face contorted. My father? What do you know about my father? More than you think. Marcus's smile turned cruel. But that's a story for another time. Or never, I suppose. He reached for his holster. Ranger lunged. The German Shepherd hit Marcus like a freight train, 80 pounds of fury and fangs. Marcus shouted, stumbling backward. Ranger's jaws clamped onto his arm teeth, sinking through fabric and flesh. The man punched the dog, kicked, tried to throw him off. Run! Ethan screamed at Emma. Take the phone and run! I'm not leaving you. Go, get help, go! Tears streaming. Emma snatched the phone from the ground and sprinted into the trees. Marcus finally threw Ranger off. The dog hit the ground hard but was back on his feet in seconds, blood on his muzzle standing between Marcus and Ethan. "Stupid animal." Marcus drew his gun. "No!" Ethan threw himself at the man 7 years old, barely 4 feet tall, but he threw himself anyway. His small body collided with Marcus's legs. It wasn't enough to knock him down, but it was enough to throw off his aim. The gun fired. The bullet went wide. Ranger charged again. Marcus kicked the boy aside and turned to face the dog, and froze. In the distance, sirens, faint but unmistakable, growing louder. "Son of a..." Marcus looked at Daniel, at Ethan on the ground, at Ranger still growling. "This isn't over." He disappeared into the trees just as quickly as he had come. Ethan lay on his back, gasping for breath. His ribs ached where Marcus had kicked him. His head spun, but he was alive. Ranger limped over and licked his face, whimpering. "Good boy," Ethan managed. Good boy." He forced himself up. Pain shot through his side, but he pushed through it and crawled back to Daniel. The sergeant's eyes were barely open. "Kid, you crazy. Kid, I learned from the best." Ethan resumed pressure on the wound. His arms screamed in protest, but he didn't care. "Emma went for help. The sirens are coming. Just hold on." "He'll be back. Marcus. He's connected. Powerful." "I don't care how powerful he is." Ethan's voice hardened. "We're not letting you die, and we're not letting him win." Daniel's hand found the boy's arm. "You should be scared of him." "I am." Ethan met the man's eyes. "But Grandpa said courage isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway." Daniel stared at this 7-year-old boy covered in blood, bruised, terrified, and felt something shift in his chest, something that had been broken for 2 years. "Your grandpa would be proud of you." Ethan's eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. "I hope so." The sirens grew louder. Through the trees, Emma ran faster than she had ever run in her life. Branches scratched her face. Her lungs screamed, but she didn't stop. The phone was still connected to 911. She could hear the dispatcher calling her name. "I'm here," she gasped. "There's a bad man. He has a gun. He tried to hurt my brother." "Emma, calm down. Where are you?" "I don't know. I ran like Ethan told me." "It's okay, honey. We're tracking your location. Stay on the line. Keep running toward the sound of the sirens." Emma burst out of the tree line and onto the main trail. 50 yards ahead, red and blue lights flashed through the morning mist. "Help!" she screamed. "Please, help!" A police cruiser screeched to a stop. 2 officers jumped out. Behind them, an ambulance was pulling up. Emma ran straight into the arms of the first officer she reached, sobbing uncontrollably. "My brother, the policeman. There's a bad man with a gun. Please, you have to help them." The officer held her tight. "We've got them, sweetheart. We've got them." Back in the clearing, Ethan heard the footsteps approaching. He tensed, ready to fight again if he had to, but it was a woman's voice that called out. "Whispering Pines! Sheriff! Anyone here? Over here!" Ethan shouted. "We're over here!" 3 officers crashed through the brush, weapons drawn. Behind them came EMTs with a stretcher. A female officer, tall, dark-haired, with sharp eyes, reached him first. Her badge read, Detective Laura Vance. "Daniel." She dropped beside her partner. "Daniel, can you hear me?" His eyes flickered open. "Took you long enough." "You stubborn idiot." Tears streamed down Vance's face even as she laughed. "You were supposed to wait for backup." "Since when do I listen?" The EMTs moved in, taking over from Ethan. Gentle hands pried his blood-soaked fingers from the wound. "You can let go now, son," one of them said softly. "You did good. You did real good." Ethan's legs buckled. He would have fallen if Detective Vance hadn't caught him. "I've got you," she said. "I've got you." He buried his face in her shoulder and cried like he hadn't cried since the day Dad walked out the door. The helicopter touched down in the clearing exactly 12 minutes later. By then, Daniel was on a stretcher of 4 in his arm oxygen mask over his face. He was stable. Barely, but stable. Before they loaded him in, he reached out and grabbed Ethan's hand. "Kid." Ethan leaned close, tears still wet on his cheeks. "Thank you," Daniel whispered. "You and your sister. You saved my life." Ethan squeezed his hand. "You better not die after all that. I ruined my dad's jacket for you." Daniel's eyes crinkled. Something that might have been a laugh escaped his oxygen mask. "Deal." They loaded him into the helicopter. The blades roared. The machine lifted into the gray morning sky and disappeared over the mountains. Emma found her brother sitting on a fallen log, staring at his blood-covered hands. Ranger lay at his feet, exhausted but alert. The dog had refused to leave Ethan's side since the danger passed. "Ethan..." Emma sat beside him. He didn't look up. "You were so brave," she said. "You fought that man. You protected everyone." "I was scared." His voice was small. "I was so scared, Emma." "Me too." She took his hand, the one not covered in blood, and held it tight. "But we did it anyway. Just like Grandpa." Ethan finally looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted, older than 7 years old should ever look. "What if he comes back?" he asked. "The bad man. What if he comes back for us?" Emma thought about this. She thought about Daniel's warning, about Marcus's cold eyes, about the way he had said witnesses like it was a death sentence. But she also thought about Ranger, who had fought without hesitation, about Ethan, who had thrown himself at a grown man to save a dog, about a stranger who had told them to run and instead found 2 children determined to save him. "Then we'll fight again," she said quietly. "Together." Ethan squeezed her hand. In the distance, more sirens wailed. More help was coming. And somewhere in the chaos of the morning, a phone was ringing. A grandmother waking up to find her grandchildren gone. And the whole world turned upside down. But for now, in this frozen clearing stained with blood and filled with impossible courage, 2 7-year-old twins sat side by side with their dog holding hands. They had saved a life today. They didn't know that the fight was only beginning. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Grace Fairbanks burst through the emergency room doors at 7:47 a.m., still wearing her convenience store uniform, her hair wild from the drive, her hands shaking so badly she could barely push through the crowd. "My children!" she screamed at the first nurse she saw. "Where are my children?" "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down. My babies were in the woods with a man who got shot, and there was a gunman, and nobody will tell me anything." "Mom." Grace spun around. Emma was running toward her arms, outstretched face streaked with dried tears. Behind her came Ethan, walking slower, his hands wrapped in white bandages, his eyes hollow. Grace dropped to her knees and caught Emma in her arms, then pulled Ethan in too, crushing them both against her chest. "Oh God, oh God, oh thank God." She was sobbing now, kissing their heads, running her hands over their arms to make sure they were real. "You're okay. You're okay. You're okay." "We're okay, Mom," Emma whispered. "We're okay." But Ethan didn't say anything. He just pressed his face into his mother's shoulder and held on like he was afraid she might disappear. Grace pulled back and looked at her son's bandaged hands. "What happened? What did they do to you?" "Nothing." Ethan's voice was flat. "The blood wasn't mine." Grace's face crumpled. She pulled him close again, and this time she didn't let go for a very long time. Across the waiting room, Detective Laura Vance watched the reunion with tired eyes. She had been up all night coordinating the search for Marcus Cole. So far, nothing. The man had vanished like smoke. Her phone buzzed. She checked the message and felt her blood run cold. "Cole's house is empty. Cleaned out. He knew we were coming." She typed back, "Put out a statewide alert and get me everything on his connection to the trafficking ring. Everything." This was bigger than she had feared, and those 2 children were right in the middle of it. Grandmother Helen arrived 20 minutes later, leaning heavily on her cane, her face pale with worry but her eyes sharp as ever. "Where are they?" she demanded before she was fully through the door. "Grandma." Both twins ran to her. Helen gathered them in her arms, tears sliding down her weathered cheeks. At 72, she had buried a husband and nearly lost a daughter to grief. She had thought nothing could frighten her anymore. She was wrong. "You foolish, brave, wonderful children," she murmured into their hair. "What on earth were you thinking?" "We had to help him, Grandma," Emma said. "He was dying." "And so you saved him." Helen pulled back and looked at them both. Really looked. Something had changed in their eyes. Something had grown up. "Just like your grandfather would have done." Ethan's chin trembled. "You're not mad." "Oh, I'm furious." Helen wiped her eyes. "And prouder than I've ever been in my life." Grace approached slowly, her arms wrapped around herself. "Mom, I don't understand. They said there was a man with a gun. They said the children fought him." "We need to talk," Detective Vance interrupted, stepping forward. "All of you. There are things you need to know." Well, the conference room was small and cramped with a single table and too many chairs. Grace sat between her children, gripping their hands like lifelines. Helen sat beside them, her cane propped against the wall, her face unreadable. Vance stood at the head of the table, a folder in her hands. "The man your children saved is Sergeant Daniel Harrow. He's been working undercover for the past 6 months investigating an illegal wildlife trafficking ring operating in the Whispering Pines area." "Wildlife trafficking?" Grace frowned. "Like poaching. Much bigger. We're talking endangered species, illegal exotic animals, millions of dollars. And it goes deeper than that." Vance opened the folder. "We believe someone inside law enforcement has been helping them, protecting them, feeding them information." Helen's eyes narrowed. "The man who shot Sergeant Harrow. Deputy Marcus Cole, 15-year veteran, spotless record." Vance's jaw tightened. "He's been playing us all for fools." Ethan's grip on his mother's hand tightened. "He said he would come back. When he found us in the woods, he said it wasn't over." Grace went pale. "What?" "Your children are witnesses," Vance said quietly. "They can identify Cole. They heard him confess, and Cole knows it." The room went silent. Grace looked at her children, her babies, her 7-year-olds, who should be worried about homework and cartoons, and felt terror wrap around her heart. "Are you telling me my children are in danger?" "I'm telling you we're going to protect them." Vance leaned forward. "I'm assigning officers to your home, round the clock. Until we catch Cole, your family doesn't go anywhere alone." "This is insane." Grace's voice broke. "They're children. They're just children." Emma squeezed her mother's hand. "We're okay, Mom. Ranger protected us. And Ethan was so brave." "I don't care how brave he was." Grace's fear exploded into anger. "You could have been killed. Both of you. What were you thinking running off into the woods before dawn?" "We were thinking about Ranger," Ethan said quietly. "He never runs off. We knew something was wrong." "And you were right." Helen's voice cut through the tension. "They followed their instincts. They saved a man's life. Would you rather they had walked away?" Grace opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I can't lose them, Mom. I can't. After everything, after David leaving, they're all I have." Helen reached over and took her daughter's hand. "You won't lose them. We won't let that happen." 3 days passed. Daniel Harrow floated in and out of consciousness, the bullet wound in his side slowly healing the faces of nurses and doctors, blurring together into an endless parade of white coats and concerned eyes. But every time he woke, he asked the same question. "The children, are they safe?" And every time Vance gave him the same answer. "They're safe. They're asking about you." On the 4th day, Daniel finally stayed awake long enough to have a real conversation. Vance sat beside his bed, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands. She looked exhausted. He probably looked worse. "Cole," he asked. "Gone. Cleaned out his house, emptied his accounts, disappeared." Vance's voice was bitter. "We've got alerts out across 5 states, but nothing yet. Daniel closed his eyes. He mentioned my father. Vance went still. What? In the woods, when he thought he'd finished me. He said my father's pride got him killed 20 years ago. Daniel's hands clenched the sheets. He knows something, Laura. Something about how my dad died. Daniel, your father died in a car accident. Did he? Daniel's eyes opened, blazing with sudden intensity. We never found the other driver. The case went cold in weeks. What if it wasn't an accident? Vance stared at him. She had known Daniel for 5 years, worked beside him, trusted him with her life. She had never seen this look in his eyes before. You think Cole was involved in your father's death? I think there's a lot more going on here than we realized, and I think those children stepped into the middle of something that's been festering for decades. Before Vance could respond, there was a knock at the door. A nurse poked her head in. Sergeant Harrow, you have visitors, 2 young children and a very determined grandmother. Daniel's heart did something strange, something it hadn't done in 2 years. It lifted. Send them in. Emma came through the door first, clutching a piece of paper against her chest. Ethan followed, hands shoved in his pockets, trying to look casual but failing miserably. Behind them walked Helen, her cane tapping a steady rhythm, her sharp eyes taking in everything. And behind Helen, Ranger. The German Shepherd padded in like he owned the place, a bright red service dog vest strapped around his chest. Vance raised an eyebrow. Service dog. Emotional support, Helen said smoothly. Doctor's orders. The children have been through a trauma. Daniel laughed. It hurt his side, but he laughed anyway. You're trouble, he said to Helen. I can tell already. You have no idea, Helen smiled. How are you feeling, Sergeant? Like I got shot. Daniel's eyes moved to the children. Hey, you two. Emma stepped forward shyly. We brought you something. She held out the piece of paper. I drew it. It's you and Ranger. He's protecting you. Daniel took the drawing with hands that weren't quite steady. It was crude the way 7-year-old art always was, but the message was clear, a big German shepherd standing guard over a man in a uniform, and above them both golden rays of light. This is... His voice caught. This is beautiful, Emma. The light is God watching, Emma explained. Grandma says God works through regular people, so I figured maybe he was working through Ranger. Daniel couldn't speak. He just stared at the drawing, at the simple faith it represented, at the hope a wounded man had no right to feel. Ethan shuffled forward. I'm sorry about your jacket. Daniel blinked. What? My dad's jacket. I used it to stop your bleeding. It's ruined now. Ethan. Daniel reached out and grabbed the boy's hand. You saved my life with that jacket. I'd say that's a pretty good trade. Ethan's tough facade cracked. His lower lip trembled. I was scared the whole time. I thought you were gonna die. But you didn't run. You stayed. Daniel squeezed his hand. That's what courage is, kid. Being scared and doing it anyway. That's what Grandpa used to say. Then your grandpa was a wise man. Ranger padded over to the bed and laid his head on the mattress, his amber eyes fixed on Daniel. A soft whine escaped his throat. Daniel reached down and scratched behind the dog's ears. Hey, buddy, you saved me too, you know. Took a chunk out of Cole's arm. Ranger's tail wagged once. Emma moved closer, studying Daniel's face. Can I ask you something? Anything. You were talking when you were hurt, about your daughter, about Lily. Emma's voice was gentle. What happened to her? The room went very still. Daniel's hand stopped moving on Ranger's head. For a long moment he didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Then slowly he spoke. She got sick. Cancer. She was only 6 years old. The words came out rough, broken. I watched her fight for 11 months. Watched her lose her hair, her strength, her smile. But she never lost hope. Even at the end, she told me everything would be okay. She told me to be brave. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. Me too. Daniel looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his chest. You remind me of her, you know. Same stubborn spirit. Same big heart. Is that why you told us to run? Ethan asked. In the woods. You didn't want us to get hurt like she did. Daniel's throat tightened. I didn't want anyone else to get hurt because of me. Especially not kids. But we didn't get hurt, Emma said firmly. We helped. That's what Lily would have wanted, right? For us to be brave. Daniel stared at this 7-year-old girl who had just reached into his chest and grabbed his broken heart with both hands. Yeah, he whispered. That's exactly what she would have wanted. Ranger lifted his head and licked Daniel's hand as if sealing a promise. Helen watched the exchange from her position by the door. She had seen a lot of broken people in her 72 years. She had been one herself after her husband died, but she had also seen people heal, and something told her she was watching the beginning of that process right now. We should let the sergeant rest, she said gently. But we'll be back tomorrow, if that's all right. Daniel nodded. I'd like that. Grace was not happy. She paced the living room of their small apartment, arms crossed, face tight with worry. I don't think it's a good idea, she said, the children getting attached to him. Why not? Helen sat in her rocking chair, knitting needles clicking steadily. Because people leave, Mom. They always leave. Grace's voice cracked. David left. Dad left. Everyone leaves. Your father didn't leave. He died. Same result. Grace stopped pacing and stared out the window. The children have been through enough. I don't want them to get close to someone who might not make it. Helen's needles stopped. Grace, look at me. Slowly, Grace turned. That man in the hospital lost his daughter. He was ready to die in those woods. And your children, your 7-year-old babies, reached into the darkness and pulled him back. Helen's voice was soft but firm. You can try to protect them from pain, but you can't protect them from caring. And caring is not a weakness. It's the only thing that makes life worth living. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I'm so scared, Mom. All the time. Every single day. I know, sweetheart. Helen set down her knitting and opened her arms. Come here. Grace crossed the room and knelt beside her mother, burying her face in Helen's lap like she had done as a child. What if something happens to them? She whispered. What if that man comes back? What if I can't protect them? Then you'll do what I did when your father died. What you did when David left. Helen stroked her daughter's hair. You'll fall apart. And then you'll put yourself back together. And you'll keep going. Because that's what mothers do. Outside the window, a police car sat parked on the street. 2 officers inside watching the apartment. The threat was real. The danger was close. But so was something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. A week passed. Then 2. Daniel was released from the hospital on a Tuesday against medical advice with strict orders to rest and a bottle of painkillers he barely touched. He didn't go home. Home was an empty apartment full of Lily's pictures and the ghost of everything he had lost. Instead, he found himself on the Fairbanks doorstep. You look terrible, Ethan said when he answered the door. Thanks, kid. You're a real confidence booster. Ethan grinned, the first real smile Daniel had seen from him, and stepped aside to let him in. The apartment was small but warm, lived in. Worn furniture, colorful throw pillows, crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator. It smelled like cinnamon and something baking. Nothing like Daniel's sterile, silent space. Emma appeared from the kitchen, flower on her nose. Sergeant Daniel, you're out. Just Daniel is fine. He winced as he lowered himself onto the couch. And yeah, doctor said I could leave, more or less. More or less means he left before they wanted him to, Vance said from the doorway. She had driven him here and clearly disapproved. He's supposed to be resting. I'll rest later. Daniel looked around. Where's your grandmother? Kitchen. Emma grabbed his hand and tugged. Come on, we're making cookies. You can help. I don't think I'm much of a baker. You're helping. And that was that. Helen stood at the counter, rolling dough with practiced hands. She looked up when Daniel limped in and smiled. Ah, our resident hero. Come to learn the ancient art of cookie making. Apparently, I don't have a choice. Smart man. Helen handed him a cookie cutter. Stars. Press firmly, but don't twist. Daniel found himself following orders. There was something calming about it. The rhythm of the work, the warmth of the kitchen, the sound of the children arguing about whether chocolate chips belonged in sugar cookies. Emma said yes. Ethan said it was heresy. For the first time in 2 years, Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. He hadn't realized how tightly he had been wound until he started to unwind. Grace came home from work at 6 o'clock exhausted and wary. She stopped dead when she saw Daniel at the kitchen table covered in flour, Emma on one side and Ethan on the other, all three of them eating cookies straight off the cooling rack. "Mom," Emma waved. "Sergeant Daniel helped us bake." "Just Daniel," he corrected again, then looked up at Grace. "Mrs. Fairbanks, I hope it's okay that I'm here." Grace stood frozen for a long moment. Then she crossed to the table and sat down across from him. "You saved my children's lives," she said quietly. "They saved yours. I think we're past formalities. Your children were incredibly brave. They kept me alive until help came. They could have died." Grace's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "That man Cole, he could have killed them. He could have." Daniel met her eyes. "But he didn't. Because your son attacked a grown man with a gun, and your daughter ran through the woods in freezing cold to get help. Because their dog fought like a lion. Because you raised fighters, Mrs. Fairbanks." Grace. Daniel nodded. "I owe you more than I can ever repay. I just want you to know that." Silence stretched between them. Then Grace reached for a cookie. "These are good," she said. "Emma's recipe, Ethan's modifications," Daniel said. "He insisted on extra vanilla. He's right. It's better." And just like that, something shifted. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it. Daniel came back the next day, and the day after, and the day after that. He fixed the broken step on the front porch. He taught Ethan how to tie the rescue knots his father had taught him. He read adventure books to Emma until his voice went hoarse. And every night he returned to Vance with updates on the investigation that was consuming both their lives. "We found Cole's bank records," Vance said one night, spreading papers across Daniel's kitchen table. "Multiple offshore accounts, money transfers going back 15 years. 15 years? Daniel frowned. "That's around when my father died." "I know. I pulled the accident report." Daniel, Vance hesitated. "There are inconsistencies, witnesses who changed their stories, evidence that went missing." "You think Cole was involved?" "I think Cole was cleaning up. Someone else gave the order." Vance slid a photograph across the table. "Recognize him." Daniel stared at the image. A man in his 60s, well-dressed, distinguished, somehow familiar. "Who is he?" "Richard Morrow, state senator, major donor to the sheriff's department." Vance's voice dropped. "And according to Cole's records, the man who's been paying him for 2 decades. Daniel's blood ran cold. "A state senator is running the trafficking ring." "It looks that way. And Daniel..." Vance paused. "Morrow was on the committee that investigated your father's death. He's the one who closed the case." The room spun. 20 years of grief, of questions, of not knowing, and now this. His father hadn't died in an accident. His father had been murdered. Daniel didn't sleep that night. He paced his apartment, staring at old photographs, replaying memories he had tried to bury. His father's voice. "Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything, son, but you do it anyway." His mother's tears at the funeral. "He was a good man, the best man I ever knew." The casket lowering into the ground. The sound of dirt hitting wood. 20 years. And now he finally had a name. A face. A target. But going after a state senator would take more than evidence. It would take leverage. It would take witnesses willing to testify. It would take Marcus Cole. Daniel picked up his phone and dialed. "Vance, I'm going back in." "What, Daniel, you're still recovering?" "I'm going back to the mountains. Cole's been operating out there for years. There has to be evidence, records, something we can use. And if Cole finds you, then I'll be ready this time." Vance was silent for a long moment. "You can't do this alone. I don't have a choice. Daniel." He hung up. The next morning, Daniel slipped away before dawn. He left a note on the Fairbanks door, knowing they would find it, knowing it wasn't enough. "I have to finish what I started. Stay safe. Stay together. I'll come back when it's over. Daniel." He didn't know that Ethan would be the one to find it, that the boy would crumple the paper in his fist, tears streaming down his face, that Emma would sit beside him silent and afraid. He didn't know that the children had already made their own decision, because 20 minutes later, they found the real note, the one Daniel had thrown away, the threatening note that had arrived at the hospital. "Drop the investigation or the children pay." Ethan stared at the crumpled paper. Emma read the words over his shoulder. "He left to protect us," Emma whispered. "He's going to get himself killed." Ethan's voice shook with anger and fear. "He's going to go back out there alone, and that man is going to kill him. What do we do?" Ethan looked at his sister, at the note in his hands, at Ranger who sat at their feet, ears up, eyes alert. "We don't let him do this alone. Ethan, Mom will never let us." "Then we don't tell Mom." Ethan's jaw set. Grandpa didn't wait for permission to run into that fire. He just did what needed to be done. "But I know where Daniel went. I heard him talking to Detective Vance." Ethan grabbed his jacket. "Ranger can track him. We can find him before Cole does." Emma's face was pale, but her eyes were determined. "We could die." "We could, but so could Daniel." Ethan held out his hand. "Are you with me?" Emma didn't hesitate. She took his hand, and together they slipped out the window into the cold morning air, Ranger following silently behind. They didn't know that Marcus Cole was already watching, waiting, and this time he wasn't planning to miss. The cold bit through Ethan's jacket within the first 10 minutes. He ignored it. He had ignored worse. He had ignored the emptiness in his chest when Dad walked out the door. He had ignored the hunger pangs when Mom forgot to buy groceries because she was working double shifts. He had ignored the fear that whispered every night that he wasn't strong enough, wasn't brave enough, wasn't enough. Today, he would prove that voice wrong. "Ranger, find him," Ethan whispered. "Find Daniel." The German Shepherd lowered his nose to the ground, circling once, twice. Then his head snapped up, and he took off into the trees. Emma grabbed her brother's hand. "Are you sure about this?" "No." Ethan squeezed back. "But we're doing it anyway." They ran. The forest swallowed them the same way it had that first morning, completely, utterly without mercy. But this time was different. This time they knew what they were running toward, and this time something was running toward them. Grace woke at 7:15 to an empty apartment. She knew immediately, the way a mother knows. The silence was wrong, too complete, too heavy. Ethan, Emma. No answer. She threw off the covers and checked their room. Empty beds, cold sheets. And on Ethan's pillow, a note in his careful 7-year-old handwriting. "We went to help Sergeant Daniel. Don't be mad, Mommy. Heroes never leave people behind. We love you." The scream that tore from Grace's throat brought Helen running. What is it?" Grace couldn't speak. She just held out the note, her whole body shaking. Helen read it once, twice. Her face went pale, then hard. "Call Detective Vance. Now." "My babies. We will find them." Helen grabbed her daughter's shoulders. "Do you hear me? We will find them. But you have to focus. Call Vance. I'll call the emergency line." Grace's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the phone, but she dialed. And when Vance answered, the words came out in a rush. "My children are gone. They went after Daniel. You have to find them. Please. You have to find them before—" "I'm on my way." Vance's voice was already moving. "Don't leave the house. I'll have units there in 5 minutes." The line went dead. Grace sank to the floor, the note clutched to her chest, and prayed for the first time in years. Daniel had been walking for 2 hours when he found the first marker, a piece of orange tape tied around a tree branch. Old, faded, but unmistakable. This was the path Cole had used to move product through the mountains. He followed it. His side ached with every step. The wound wasn't fully healed, probably never would be, but he pushed through. Pain was just information. And right now, the only information that mattered was finding evidence that would bring down Marcus Cole and Richard Morrow. Evidence that would finally answer the question that had haunted him for 20 years. Who killed his father? The second marker appeared 10 minutes later, then the third, then the fourth. He was getting close. And that's when he heard the voices. Daniel dropped behind a fallen log, pressing himself flat against the cold earth. 2 men were walking the trail ahead, rifles slung over their shoulders, voices carrying in the morning quiet. Said to keep eyes out. Boss thinks the cop might come back. Alone. After what happened last time, he'd have to be stupid. Cole says he's not stupid, just stubborn. The men passed within 20 feet of Daniel's position. He held his breath until they disappeared around a bend. Then he moved. The camp was smaller than he expected. 3 canvas tents, a makeshift corral holding cages of various sizes, and a communications station with a satellite antenna. Daniel counted 6 men total, all armed, all moving with the easy confidence of people who had done this many times before. And in the center of it all, standing next to a folding table covered in maps and papers, Marcus Cole. Daniel's blood went cold, then hot, then cold again. This was the man who had shot him, left him to die, threatened children. This was the man who had killed his father. Daniel reached for his weapon and froze. Cold metal pressed against the back of his skull. "Don't even think about it," a voice said behind him. 2 miles away, Ranger stopped. "What is it, boy?" Ethan whispered. The dog's hackles rose. A low growl built in his throat. Emma pressed close to her brother. "He smells something bad." "People." Ranger's growl deepened. He took 3 steps forward, then stopped again, looking back at the children with what could only be described as a warning. "He wants us to be careful," Emma said. "He knows something's wrong." Ethan crouched down and looked into the dog's amber eyes. "Can you still find Daniel?" Ranger whined once, then turned and continued forward, slower this time, more cautious. The twins followed. They had been walking for nearly 3 hours when they heard the first voice. Ethan grabbed Emma and pulled her behind a cluster of rocks. Ranger pressed flat against the ground, silent and still. A man walked past, not 10 feet from their hiding spot, rifle in his hands, radio on his belt. Emma's heart pounded so loud she was sure the man would hear it, but he kept walking, disappearing into the trees. "There's more of them," Ethan breathed. "This isn't just Cole. This is a whole operation." "What do we do?" Ethan's mind raced. They were 7 years old. They had no weapons, no backup, no plan beyond find Daniel. But they had come this far. "We keep going," he said. "But we have to be smarter, quieter. Can you do that?" Emma nodded. "Ranger." Ethan touched the dog's head. "Quiet boy, quiet and slow." The German shepherd seemed to understand. He moved forward like a shadow, the children creeping behind him. They had no idea what they would find, but they were about to find out. Daniel's hands were zip-tied behind his back. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead where the guard had struck him. His weapon was gone, his phone was gone, and any hope of escape was rapidly fading. Cole stood in front of him, arms crossed, a thin smile on his face. "You know, I really thought you'd stay in that hospital bed. Lick your wounds. Give up." He shook his head. "But you heroes never know when to quit, do you?" Daniel said nothing. "Your father was the same way. Kept digging and digging. Couldn't leave well enough alone." Cole leaned closer. "And look where it got him." "You killed him," Daniel's voice was raw. "You murdered my father." "Me no. I just cleaned up the mess." Cole's smile widened. The order came from much higher up. Same man who's been running this operation for 30 years. Same man who will be very interested to know you're still alive. Morrow. Something flickered in Cole's eyes. Surprise quickly hidden. "You've been busy," he said. "I'm impressed." I know everything, Daniel spat. The trafficking, the payoffs, the murders. It's over, Cole. Even if you kill me, it's over. Is it? Cole pulled out his phone and swiped through it. Let me show you something. He held up the screen. Daniel's blood turned to ice. It was a photograph, taken from a distance but clear enough. 2 children walking through the woods, a German shepherd at their heels, Ethan and Emma. Looks like your little heroes decided to play rescue again, Cole said softly. My men spotted them about an hour ago. They're getting close. No. Daniel's voice broke. Leave them alone. They're just children. Children who can identify me. Children who heard me confess to shooting a police officer. Cole tucked the phone away. I'm afraid that makes them a liability, Daniel, one I can't afford. I'll do whatever you want. Daniel was begging now. He didn't care. I'll disappear. I'll drop the investigation. Too late for that. Cole turned to one of his men. Bring them in. Alive for now. I want Harrow to watch. No. Daniel lunged, zip ties cutting into his wrists. Desperation giving him strength he didn't know he had. He got 2 steps before a rifle butt slammed into his stomach. He collapsed, gasping, as Cole's men dragged him toward one of the tents. Lock him up, Cole ordered, and radio the others. Tell them to close the net. Emma heard the radio chatter first. 2 children, 1 dog, moving toward the south ridge. Intercept and contain. Her blood froze. Ethan! Ethan, they know we're here! Her brother's face went white. What? I heard them on the radio. They're coming for us. Ranger's ears were flat against his head. He knew. Somehow he always knew. We have to hide. Ethan grabbed Emma's hand. Now! They ran. But the forest that had seemed so familiar now felt like a maze. Every direction looked the same. Every sound could be an enemy. And the sounds were getting closer. There! Emma pointed to a hollow under a massive fallen tree. We can fit. They dove into the darkness, Ranger squeezing in after them. Emma clamped a hand over her own mouth to muffle her breathing. Ethan wrapped his arm around Ranger's neck, feeling the dog's heart racing as fast as his own. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Coming closer. I know you're out here, kids. A man's voice. Not Cole's. Someone else. Come on out. We won't hurt you. Neither child moved. Your friend the cop is waiting for you. Don't you want to see him? He's been asking about you. Emma's eyes went wide. Daniel. They had Daniel. Ethan shook his head frantically. Don't move. Don't make a sound. The footsteps passed their hiding spot, paused, moved on. For a full minute, nobody breathed. Then slowly, Ranger crawled out of the hollow and lifted his nose to the air. He looked back at the children and whined softly. He found Daniel's scent, Emma whispered. I know he did. But the bad men are everywhere. We can't leave him. Emma's voice cracked. We can't. He came back for us, Ethan. He risked his life for us. We have to try. Ethan stared at his sister. 7 years old, covered in dirt, trembling with fear, but her eyes were steady, determined, just like Grandpa's eyes in the photograph Mom kept on her dresser. Okay, he said, but we do this smart. We don't just run in there. What's the plan? Ethan thought, harder than he had ever thought in his life. Grandpa used to tell stories about the war, he said slowly, about how small groups could beat bigger ones. They used distractions, made the enemy look one way while they moved the other way. A diversion. Yeah, Ethan looked at Ranger. If we can get the bad guys to chase something to leave wherever they're keeping Daniel, then maybe we can get to him. But what would they chase? Both children looked at the dog. Ranger looked back at them, ears up, tail still. He's the fastest, Emma said quietly. And the bravest. If anyone can lead them away. It's too dangerous. Ethan's voice caught. What if they hurt him? Emma was crying now, but her voice stayed steady. What if they hurt Daniel or us? Ranger would never forgive himself. Ethan knelt in front of the German shepherd. He took the dog's face in his hands and looked into those amber eyes. You understand, don't you, boy? You know what we're asking. Ranger licked his cheek once. Then he stood, shook himself, and turned toward the direction the footsteps had gone. He looked back one more time. We love you, Emma whispered. Be careful. Ranger barked once, sharp, loud, deliberate, and took off running. Shouts erupted through the forest. There the dog. After it. The sounds of pursuit crashed through the underbrush, moving away from the children, moving away from the camp. Ethan grabbed Emma's hand. Now, we go now. They ran. The camp was chaos. Half the guards had gone chasing after Ranger, leaving only 2 men behind. Daniel could hear the commotion outside the tent where they had locked him, could hear Cole cursing into his radio. Forget the dog, find the children. They're the ones that matter. Daniel pulled at his bonds until his wrists bled. It was useless. The zip ties were industrial grade. But then he heard something else. A whisper, just outside the tent. Daniel, are you in there? His heart stopped. Ethan. Get out of here, Daniel hissed. Both of you, run, now. We're not leaving without you. That was Emma. Her voice was shaking, but she didn't back down. Ethan has Grandpa's knife. We can cut you loose. The guards. They're chasing Ranger. We have maybe 2 minutes. Daniel heard the sound of the tent fabric being lifted. Then 2 small faces appeared in the dim light. Ethan was already moving toward him, the pocket knife out, sawing at the zip ties with desperate determination. You kids are insane, Daniel breathed. We learned from the best, Emma said. The first zip tie snapped, then the second. Daniel's hands were free. Okay, let's move. He stumbled to his feet, grabbing Ethan's shoulder for support. Where's Ranger? The twins exchanged a look. He's buying us time, Emma said quietly. Daniel understood, and it broke his heart. We have to go. Now. Before what? They spun around. Marcus Cole stood at the tent entrance, his gun drawn, his smile cold. Before I ruin everyone's day, he stepped forward, blocking the only exit. You know, I'm starting to feel personally offended. A grown man I can understand. But 2 7-year-olds outsmarting my entire crew. That's just embarrassing. Daniel pushed the children behind him. Let them go. This is between you and me. No, Daniel. It stopped being between just us the moment they saw my face. Cole raised the gun. I really am sorry about this. I don't enjoy killing children. But you've left me no choice. Please. A blur of fur and fury exploded through the tent wall. Ranger hit Cole at full speed, jaws clamping onto his gun arm with bone-crushing force. The weapon flew from his grip, skidding across the ground. Cole screamed. Run! Daniel shoved the children toward the torn tent fabric. Go! They ran. All of them. Daniel half carrying Ethan, Emma sprinting ahead. Ranger still fighting behind them. Then the gunshot. Emma screamed. Ranger! The dog yelped. A horrible, heart-wrenching sound. Keep running! Daniel's voice broke. We can't stop. No! Emma tried to turn back. No, Ranger! Daniel grabbed her, lifted her off her feet, kept moving. His side was on fire. His lungs were burning. But he didn't stop. Behind them, more shouts, more gunfire. And then silence. They ran until they couldn't run anymore. Daniel collapsed against a rock, gasping, the children pressed against his sides. His wound had reopened. Blood soaked through his shirt. Ranger. Emma sobbed. Ranger, Ranger, Ranger. Ethan wasn't crying. His face was stone, but his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't control them. Listen to me, Daniel forced out. Both of you. Listen. They looked at him. We're not done. We have to keep moving. There's a ranger station about 2 miles east. If we can get there, we can call for help. But Ranger, I know. Daniel's own eyes were wet. I know. But the best thing we can do for him right now is survive. Do you understand? Emma shook her head. I can't leave him. I can't. Emma. Daniel took her face in his hands. Your dog saved our lives. All 3 of us. Don't let that sacrifice be for nothing. Something shifted in the little girl's eyes. Pain, yes. Grief, yes. But beneath it, steel. Okay, she whispered. Okay. They moved. The storm hit 30 minutes later. It came without warning, a wall of wind and snow that turned the forest into a white nightmare. Within minutes, visibility dropped to almost nothing. "We have to find shelter," Daniel shouted over the howling wind. "Where?" Ethan was shivering violently. His jacket was too thin, his boots not waterproof. Daniel looked around frantically. Nothing. Just trees and snow and the growing certainty that they were all going to die out here. Then Emma tugged his sleeve. "There," she said, pointing. "A cave." It wasn't really a cave, more of an overhang, a natural hollow in the rock face. But it was something. They stumbled inside, huddling together for warmth. Daniel wrapped both children in his arms, trying to share what body heat he had left. "I'm cold." Ethan's teeth chattered. "I'm really cold." "I know, buddy. I know." Daniel held him tighter. "We just have to wait out the storm. Help is coming." "How do you know?" "Because your grandmother wouldn't let anything stop her. And neither would your mom." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, 3 people clung to each other and waited. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, a sound. Shuffling, scraping, something moving toward them. Daniel tensed. He had no weapon, no strength left. If it was Cole, if it was one of his men, a wet nose pressed against his hand. "Oh my God," Daniel breathed. Ranger stumbled into the hollow and collapsed at their feet. Blood matted his flank. His breathing was shallow, ragged, but his tail wagged once when he saw the children. "Ranger." Both twins threw themselves at the dog, sobbing, wrapping their arms around his neck. Daniel stared in disbelief. The dog had been shot. He had watched Cole fire. And yet here he was. "You impossible, beautiful, stubborn animal," Daniel whispered. "How did you find us?" Ranger just licked his hand. Emma was already examining the wound, her small fingers gentle but sure. "It's bad," she said, her voice cracking. "He's bleeding a lot." Daniel tore a strip from his shirt and handed it to her. "Press this against it. Hard. Just like before." "Will he be okay?" Daniel looked at the dog, at the wound, at the storm raging outside. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but he's a fighter, just like you." Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time lost meaning in the darkness. Daniel's wound throbbed. Ranger's breathing grew more labored. The children slept fitfully against his sides, exhausted beyond measure. And the storm kept howling. Sometime in the deepest part of the night, Emma stirred. "Daniel?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Are we going to die?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "No," he said. "We're not going to die." "How do you know?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, when Lily was sick at the end, she told me something. She said that love doesn't let go, even when everything else does, even when it seems impossible. "Do you believe that?" "I'm trying to." His arm tightened around her. "Your grandmother believes it, your mom believes it, and right now there are people out there fighting through this storm to find us, because they love you." Emma was quiet. Then, "I love you too, Daniel." His heart cracked open. "I love you too, Emma. Both of you." Ethan stirred on his other side. "That's 3 against 1, he mumbled sleepily. 3 against 1 what? If Ranger loves you too, that's 3 against 1. You're outnumbered." Daniel laughed. It hurt his side, but he laughed. "Yeah," he said. "I guess I am." Somewhere above them, the storm began to weaken. And somewhere in the darkness, Ranger lifted his head. His ears swiveled forward. He whined softly. "What is it, boy?" Ethan whispered. Ranger whined again, but this time his tail wagged, and then Daniel heard it too. Helicopter blades, cutting through the dying storm, getting closer. "They found us," he breathed. "They actually found us." Emma sat up, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, maybe, probably, I don't know." Daniel was crying too. He didn't care. But someone found us. A searchlight swept across the rocks, then another. Then a voice amplified by megaphone, "Daniel Harrow, Ethan, and Emma Fairbanks, if you can hear me, signal your location." Daniel grabbed a piece of wood and dragged himself to the edge of the hollow. He waved it frantically, screaming at the top of his lungs. "Here, we're here!" The searchlight found them, held, and suddenly the air was full of sound helicopters, landing voices shouting, boots crunching through snow. Detective Vance was the first to reach them. "Daniel, oh thank God, Daniel!" "The kids first." He pointed to the hollow. "They're hypothermic, and the dog, he's been shot. He needs a vet immediately." Vance was already radioing for medical support, and then another voice cut through the chaos. "Ethan, Emma, Grace." She burst through the line of rescuers and threw herself at her children, scooping them both into her arms, sobbing so hard she couldn't speak. "Mom!" Emma clung to her. "Mom! Mom! Mom!" "I'm here, baby. I'm here. I've got you." Behind her came Helen, moving faster than a 72-year-old with a cane should be able to move. She fell to her knees beside Ranger. "This dog," she said, her voice breaking. "This brave, stupid, wonderful dog." The medics moved in, wrapped the children in thermal blankets, started IV lines, lifted Ranger onto a stretcher. Daniel watched it all through a haze of exhaustion and blood loss. "You should let them check you too," Vance said. "I'm fine. You're bleeding through your shirt." "I said I'm fine." Vance grabbed his shoulder. "Daniel, it's over. You did it. You found them. Now let us take care of you." Daniel looked at the children bundled in their mother's arms, at Ranger being carried toward the helicopter, at the team of officers fanning out into the woods to search for Cole. "It's not over," he said quietly. "Not until Cole is in custody. Not until Morrow is exposed. We'll get them, I promise." Vance's grip tightened. "But right now, you need to survive. Those kids need you to survive." Daniel's legs buckled. He would have fallen if Vance hadn't caught him. "Medic," she shouted. "I need a medic over here." As they loaded him onto a stretcher, Daniel turned his head. Grace was still holding her children, but she was looking at him. Their eyes met. "Thank you," she mouthed. He managed a small nod, and then the darkness took him. Daniel woke to the sound of machines beeping. For a long, disorienting moment, he didn't know where he was. White walls, fluorescent lights, the sharp smell of antiseptic. Hospital. He was in a hospital. Then everything came rushing back: the storm, the cave, the children's faces pressed against his sides, Ranger bleeding in the darkness. He tried to sit up and gasped as pain tore through his side. "Easy." A hand pressed him back down. "You've been out for 16 hours. Don't undo all our hard work." Daniel blinked. Detective Vance sat beside his bed, dark circles under her eyes, coffee cup in hand. "The kids," he croaked. "Are they safe, warm, currently eating their weight in hospital cafeteria pudding?" Vance almost smiled. "Their grandmother hasn't let them out of her sight." "And Ranger?" Vance's expression shifted. Something careful entered her eyes. "The vet is still working on him. It's touch and go." Daniel closed his eyes. That dog had saved them all. Twice. And now he might die for it. "Cole, gone." Vance's voice hardened. "We found the camp, arrested 6 of his men, seized evidence that will bury Morrow's operation for good. But Cole slipped through. How is that possible? He knows these mountains better than anyone. By the time the storm cleared, he had a 12-hour head start." She leaned forward. "But we've got every agency in 5 states looking for him. FBI, state police, U.S. Marshals. He can't hide forever." Daniel stared at the ceiling. Cole was still out there, still free, still dangerous. "He'll come back," he said quietly. "What?" "He'll come back for the children. He said they were witnesses, liabilities." Daniel turned to meet Vance's eyes. "He won't stop until they're silenced." Vance's jaw tightened. "We have officers stationed at the hospital, more at the Fairbanks apartment. He won't get anywhere near them." "That's not enough." "Daniel, it's not enough." He grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "You don't understand. This isn't just about covering his tracks anymore. I humiliated him. Those kids humiliated him. A 7-year-old boy tackled him. A German shepherd nearly took his arm off. His entire operation is falling apart because of 2 children and a dog. He paused, breathing hard. Men like Cole don't run from that kind of shame. They run toward it. They need to prove they're still in control. Vance was quiet for a long moment. What do you suggest? Double the guards, move the family to a safe house, and find Cole before he finds them. We're doing everything we can. Do more. The words hung in the air between them. Finally, Vance nodded. I'll make some calls. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Daniel. Those kids have been asking about you. Constantly. The little girl, Emma, she made you another drawing. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and set it on his bedside table. Get some rest. You're no good to anyone dead. After she left, Daniel unfolded the drawing. It showed 5 figures standing together, a tall man in a police uniform, a woman with long hair, 2 small children holding hands, and a German shepherd with a bandage on his side. Above them, in Emma's careful handwriting, Our Family. Daniel's eyes blurred. He held the drawing against his chest and stared at the ceiling. Our family. When had that happened? When had these strangers become his family? 2 floors down, in a private waiting room, Grace Fairbanks sat with her children. Ethan was asleep, his head in her lap, his bandaged hands twitching in dreams she couldn't protect him from. Emma was curled against her side, wide awake, watching the door. Sweetheart, you need to sleep, Grace murmured. Can't. Emma's voice was small. Every time I close my eyes, I see Ranger. I hear the gunshot. Grace's heart cracked. How did you comfort a child who had seen too much, who had done too much, who had grown up too fast? The vet said he's a fighter, she said. Just like you. What if he doesn't make it? Then we honor him, we remember him, and we never forget what he did for us. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom, I'm not sorry. What? I'm not sorry we went after Daniel. I know it was dangerous. I know we could have died. Emma looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed far older than 7. But he would have died without us, and I couldn't live with that. Grace wanted to argue, wanted to say that nothing was worth risking her children's lives, wanted to wrap them both in bubble wrap and never let them out of her sight again. But she couldn't, because deep down in a place she barely acknowledged, she was proud. Terrified, yes. Furious, yes, but proud. Your grandfather would have understood, she said finally. Emma's face softened. Really? Really? Grace kissed the top of her daughter's head. He ran into burning buildings. He knew that sometimes the most dangerous choice is the right one. Grandma says he never left anyone behind. He didn't, and neither did you. Emma snuggled closer. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever know. Silence settled over the room, and then the door burst open. Helen came in so fast she nearly tripped over her cane. Her face was alight with something Grace hadn't seen in years. Joy. He's going to make it, she said breathlessly. Ranger, he's going to make it. Emma was on her feet before Grace could blink. Really? He's okay. Can I see him? Please, Grandma, please. Slow down, little one. Helen caught the girl and held her close. He's still recovering, but the vet says the surgery was successful. The bullet missed everything vital. He'll need time to heal, but he's going to be fine. Emma burst into tears. Not sad tears, relief tears, joy tears. The kind of tears that come when you've been holding your breath so long you forgot what breathing felt like. Ethan stirred awake, confused. What's happening? Ranger's okay? Emma threw herself at her brother. He's going to be okay. For a moment, just a moment, everything was right in the world. Then Grace's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. Normally, she would ignore it, but something made her answer. Hello? Silence on the other end. Then Mrs. Fairbanks. Her blood froze. She knew that voice. Marcus Cole. You should know, he said calmly, that the officers outside your door are about to receive an emergency call. A false one, of course. But by the time they realize that I'll already be inside, Grace's hand shook so badly she could barely hold the phone. What do you want? Justice, Mrs. Fairbanks. Your children took something from me. My reputation, my operation, my future. His voice hardened. I intend to take something from them in return. If you touch my children, you'll call the police. By all means. They'll arrive just in time to clean up. The line went dead. Grace stood frozen for exactly 2 seconds. Then she moved. Mom, get the children. We're leaving. Now. Helen didn't ask questions. She grabbed both twins, one in each hand, and started for the door. The back stairs, Grace said. The ones by the service elevator. We can get to the parking garage without passing the main entrance. Grace, what's happening? He's here. Cole is here. Helen's face went pale, but she didn't hesitate. Go. I'm right behind you. They ran. The hospital corridors blurred past fluorescent lights, sterile walls startled nurses who shouted after them. Grace didn't stop, didn't explain, didn't slow down. Her children, her babies. Nothing else mattered. They reached the stairwell and pushed through. The door slammed behind them. Down, Grace ordered. Fast but quiet. Don't make a sound. They descended. 1 floor, 2 floors, 3. Behind them, far above, a door opened. Footsteps began to follow. Grace pushed the children faster. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. 4th floor, 5th. The footsteps were getting closer. 6th floor. The parking garage door was just ahead. Grace slammed into it, shoving it open, pulling her mother and children through. The garage was dark, mostly empty. Their car was parked somewhere in the back. This way, she hissed. They ran between concrete pillars, the sound of their feet echoing in the empty space. Ethan was limping, his legs weren't fully recovered, but he didn't complain. Emma held her grandmother's hand with white-knuckled intensity. They were almost to the car when the lights went out. Complete darkness. Emma screamed. Quiet! Grace pulled her close. Stay together. Hold hands. Don't let go. Her eyes adjusted slowly. Shapes emerged from the blackness. Pillars, cars, walls, and a figure standing between them and the exit. Did you really think you could run from me? Cole's voice echoed through the garage. I've been doing this for 20 years, Mrs. Fairbanks. I've evaded federal agents, state police, international task forces. You think a frightened mother and some children were going to escape? Grace shoved her family behind her. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. The police know you're here. They're coming. Perhaps, but they'll be too late. Cole stepped closer. This won't take long. Ethan pushed past his mother. Leave my family alone. Cole actually laughed. The little hero, still trying to play tough. He crouched down to Ethan's level. You know I was going to make this quick, but after what you put me through, I think I'll take my time. Ethan didn't flinch, didn't back down. You're scared, he said. Cole's smile flickered. What? That's why you came after us. That's why you're threatening children in a parking garage. Ethan's voice was steady. Because we beat you. Twice. And you can't stand it. For a moment, Cole's mask slipped. Something dark and ugly flashed in his eyes. Then he straightened up. You know what, kid? You're right. I am going to enjoy this. He reached for his weapon, and a voice rang out from the darkness. Cole. Everyone spun. Daniel Harrow stood at the far end of the garage, pale as death hospital gown, visible under his jacket, a gun in his trembling hand. Step away from them, now! Cole's eyes narrowed. You should be in a bed, Sergeant, preferably dying. I got better. Daniel moved closer, keeping his weapon trained. It's over, Cole. FBI is surrounding the building. There's nowhere left to run. Then I have nothing to lose. Cole moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed Emma, yanking her against his chest, pressing his gun to her temple. Drop it, Harrow, or this little hero loses her head. No! Grace lunged forward. Cole swung his gun toward her. Stay back. Grace froze, tears streaming down her face. Daniel's hand shook. His whole body shook. He had a shot barely, but if he missed... "Let her go," he said. "Take me instead. I'm the one you want. You're not the one who humiliated me." Cole's grip tightened on Emma. "You didn't beat me with rescue knots and old jackets. These children did. Their grandmother did. Even their stupid dog did." "Please," Daniel's voice broke. "She's 7 years old. She's just a child. She's a witness. I'll confess to everything. I'll say I made it all up. I'll destroy every piece of evidence. Just let her go." Cole considered this. For one agonizing moment, hope flickered. Then he shook his head. "No, I don't think so." His finger tightened on the trigger. "Say goodbye, Harrow." Emma moved. She bit Cole's hand hard with everything she had, sinking her teeth into the flesh between his thumb and forefinger. Cole screamed. His grip loosened. Emma dropped and rolled just like Ethan had taught her in their backyard wrestling matches. And Daniel fired. The bullet caught Cole in the shoulder. He spun, staggered, dropped his weapon. Ethan was already moving. He grabbed Emma and pulled her toward their mother, toward their grandmother, toward safety. Cole stumbled against a concrete pillar, bleeding cornered, but he wasn't finished. He lunged for his fallen gun. Daniel fired again. Click. Empty. Cole's hand closed around the weapon. He raised it, blood dripping from his shoulder, hatred burning in his eyes. "You lose, Harrow." A shape flew out of the darkness. Ranger hit Cole like a freight train. The gun went flying. Man and dog went down in a tangle of fur and fury. Ranger's jaws found Cole's throat and held, not biting, just pinning, just waiting. And then the garage filled with light and sound and voices. FBI agents pouring in from every entrance, weapons drawn, shouting commands. "On the ground, hands where we can see them. Nobody move. We need medical over here." Vance reached Cole first, kicking the gun away, pressing her knee into his back. "Marcus Cole, you are under arrest for attempted murder, racketeering, trafficking, and the murder of George Harrow." Cole spit blood onto the concrete. "You have no proof of that last one." "Actually, we do." Vance smiled grimly. "Your offshore accounts, they included records going back 20 years, including a payment dated 2 days before George Harrow's accident. Care to explain that?" Cole said nothing. Vance pulled him to his feet and handed him off to waiting agents. Daniel collapsed against a pillar, his legs finally giving out. Medical personnel rushed toward him, but he waved them off. His eyes found Emma. The little girl ran across the garage and threw herself into his arms. "You came," she sobbed. "You came for us." "Always." He held her tight, ignoring the pain screaming through his body. "I'll always come for you." Ethan joined them next, and then Grace, and then Helen. They stood there in the middle of a crime scene, wrapped around each other, crying and shaking and alive. Ranger limped over and pressed his nose against Daniel's hand. Daniel laughed through his tears. "You're supposed to be recovering, you stubborn mutt." Ranger's tail wagged once. Vance approached slowly, carefully, not wanting to intrude. "Daniel, the medics really need to look at you. In a minute. You're bleeding through your gown." "I said in a minute." Grace pulled back slightly, her eyes finding Daniel's. "Thank you," she whispered. "That's the second time you've saved my children. Third, technically." Daniel managed a weak smile. "I'm starting to think it's my job." Grace laughed, a watery, exhausted, beautiful sound. "Maybe it is." She leaned forward and pressed a kiss to his forehead. Daniel's eyes widened. Emma giggled. "Mom likes you." "Emma." Grace's face flushed. "It's okay." Ethan grinned. "We like him too." Daniel looked at this family, this broken, brave, impossible family, and felt something shift in his chest. Something that had been frozen for 2 years. Something that finally began to thaw. 3 weeks later, Daniel Harrow stood before a committee of federal investigators and testified for 6 hours. He told them everything. The trafficking ring, Morrow's involvement, Cole's confession about his father, the evidence recovered from the mountain camp. When he finished, the lead investigator leaned back in his chair. "Sergeant Harrow, based on your testimony and the evidence collected, we have sufficient grounds to issue an arrest warrant for Senator Richard Morrow." Daniel's hands clenched beneath the table. When, immediately. The arrest was broadcast on every major news network. Richard Morrow, 3-term state senator, philanthropist, pillar of the community, was led out of his mansion in handcuffs. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. His face was a mask of rage and disbelief. Grace and the children watched the coverage from Helen's living room. "That's the man who hurt your daddy?" Emma asked Daniel. He nodded slowly. "That's the man who gave the order, a long time ago. Is he going to prison?" "For a very long time." Emma considered this. Then she nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Bad guys should go to prison." "Yeah." Daniel felt something loosen in his chest, a knot that had been there for 20 years. "They should." Ethan was unusually quiet. He sat by the window staring out at the snow-covered yard. Daniel moved to sit beside him. "You okay, buddy?" "I was thinking about your dad." Ethan didn't look up. "About how he died trying to do the right thing." "Yeah." "And how you almost died too." "Twice." Daniel waited. "Is that what heroes do?" Ethan's voice was small. "They just die." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he put his arm around the boy's shoulders. "Some heroes die, that's true, but not all of them." He paused. "My father died, yes, but he didn't fail. The investigation he started, the one that got him killed, it led to this, tomorrow's arrest, to Cole's capture, to justice. But he never got to see it. No, he didn't." Daniel's throat tightened. "But I did, because he raised me to keep fighting, to never give up. And you know what?" Ethan finally looked at him. "You kept me alive long enough to finish what he started." Daniel's eyes glistened. "A 7-year-old boy with a pocket knife and his grandfather's courage. You saved me, Ethan, and through me, you saved everything my father worked for." Ethan's lower lip trembled. "Really? Really?" The boy threw his arms around Daniel's neck and held on tight. "I miss my grandpa," he whispered. "I never even met him, but I miss him." "I know, buddy. I miss my dad, too." Daniel hugged him back. "But I think they're watching. Both of them. And I think they're proud." Ranger padded over and laid his head in Ethan's lap. The three of them sat there watching the snow fall, not needing words. That evening, Grace found Daniel on the front porch. He was holding a small cassette tape, turning it over and over in his hands. "What's that?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Vance found it in the old evidence files. It's a recording my father made. A message to me." He stared at the tape. "I haven't been able to listen to it. Not yet." Grace waited. "I'm scared," Daniel admitted, "of what he might say, of how it might make me feel." He laughed bitterly. "I faced down Cole twice, but I'm terrified of a cassette tape. That's because this matters more." Grace's hand found his. "The people who hurt us, they're easy to fight, but the ones who loved us, that's harder." Daniel looked at her. "When did you get so wise?" "Raising twins will do that to you." She smiled. "You don't have to listen to it alone, you know." "No. The kids have been asking about your father, about your story. Maybe," she hesitated, "maybe we could hear it together, as a family." Family. There was that word again. Daniel stared at the tape, then at Grace, then at the warm light spilling from the windows where he could see Helen teaching the twins to make cookies. "Okay," he said quietly. "Together." They went inside. The old cassette player that Helen had dug out of her closet sat on the coffee table. Everyone gathered around Grace, the twins, Helen, Daniel. Even Ranger, who lay at the children's feet, his bandaged side rising and falling steadily. Daniel's hands shook as he inserted the tape. "You don't have to do this now," Grace said. "Yes, I do." He pressed play. Static at first, then a clearing of throat, and then his father's voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, son, it means I didn't make it out. I'm sorry for that. Truly. There's so much I wanted to teach you, so much I wanted to see. Your graduation, your wedding, your children. All the moments I'm going to miss. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. But I need you to understand something. What I'm doing, what I've been investigating, it's bigger than me. Bigger than both of us. And if I fail, if they stop me, I need you to know the truth. A pause, the sound of papers rustling. Richard Morrow is running an operation that goes back decades. Trafficking, corruption, murder. He has people inside the police department, inside the government. They've been protecting him for years. I've gathered evidence as much as I could and hidden it where they won't find it. But I'm running out of time. I can feel them closing in. Another pause, longer this time. Daniel, if you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I left you. But I want you to know I'm not afraid. Because I know who you are. I know the man you're becoming. And I know that when the time comes, you'll do the right thing. Even when it costs you. Even when it hurts. Because that's what heroes do. That's what heroes do. Daniel was openly crying now. So was Grace. Even Helen had tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. I love you, son. More than I ever managed to say. Be brave. Be good. Be the man I always knew you could be. And remember, the badge means nothing if you're too afraid to use it when it matters. The tape clicked off. Silence. Then Emma crawled into Daniel's lap. Your daddy sounds nice, she said softly. I bet he would have liked us. Daniel held her tight. Yeah, sweetheart, he would have loved you. Ethan moved to sit beside him. Grace took his hand. Helen laid a gentle palm on his shoulder. And for the first time in 20 years, Daniel Harrow let himself grieve. Not alone, but surrounded by a family he never expected to find. 1 month had passed since the night in the parking garage. 1 month since Marcus Cole was taken away in handcuffs. 1 month since Richard Morrow's empire came crashing down. 1 month since Daniel Harrow finally understood that some wounds heal not in solitude, but in the presence of people who refuse to let you break. The winter had settled deep into Whispering Pines, but something warmer had taken root in the small apartment above the old hardware store. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. Daniel stood in front of Helen's bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of his dress uniform for the third time. His hands were steadier now than they had been. His side still ached in the mornings, but the doctor said the internal damage had healed better than expected. The external damage was another story. There were new lines around his eyes, gray at his temples that hadn't been there 6 months ago, and a scar on his abdomen that would never fully fade. But when he looked in the mirror, he didn't see a broken man anymore. He saw a survivor. You're going to wear a hole in that collar. Daniel turned. Helen stood in the doorway, her cane in one hand, a velvet box in the other. Nervous, she asked. Terrified. Good, she smiled. That means it matters. She crossed the room and pressed the velvet box into his hands. What's this? Open it. Daniel lifted the lid. Inside, resting on faded silk, was a firefighter's badge. Tarnished with age, worn smooth at the edges, but unmistakable. His breath caught. This was my husband's. Helen's voice was soft. He wore it the night he died, the night he ran into that burning building for the last time. She reached up and touched Daniel's cheek. I've been holding on to it for 40 years, waiting for the right person to give it to. Helen, I can't. You can, and you will. Her eyes glistened. You remind me of him, Daniel. The same stubbornness, the same courage, the same inability to walk away when someone needs help. She closed his fingers around the box. He would have wanted you to have this. Daniel stared at the badge, at the weight of it in his hands, at the legacy it represented. I don't know if I deserve it, he whispered. None of us deserve the love we're given. Helen patted his chest. We just try to live up to it. From downstairs came the sound of children arguing. I'm wearing the red one, but I wanted the red one. You wore red last time. Helen chuckled. Sounds like duty calls. Daniel slipped the badge into his pocket next to the cassette tape he still carried everywhere and headed down to referee. The twins were in the middle of an epic standoff when he reached the living room. Ethan held a red tie in one hand. Emma held the other end. Neither was willing to let go. "I called it first," Ethan insisted. "You always call it first. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. That's a grown-up thing to say. I am grown up. You're 7. So are you." Daniel cleared his throat. Both children froze, still gripping the tie. "Here's an idea," Daniel said calmly. "How about Ethan wears the red tie and Emma wears this?" He pulled a small velvet ribbon from behind his back, deep crimson with gold edges. Emma's eyes went wide. "Where did you get that?" "I have my sources." He winked at Helen, who was watching from the stairs. "It matches the red exactly. You can wear it in your hair." Emma released the tie immediately and snatched the ribbon. "This is even better." She spun around. "Grandma, can you help me put it in?" Crisis averted. Grace emerged from the kitchen looking more beautiful than Daniel had ever seen her. She wore a simple blue dress, the first nice thing she had bought herself in years, and her hair was down around her shoulders. "Everyone ready?" she asked. "Almost." Daniel straightened Ethan's tie. "Looking sharp, buddy." Ethan beamed. "You too." "I try." Daniel turned to Grace. "You look..." "Don't." She blushed. "Don't make a big thing." "I was just going to say you look nice." "That's making a big thing." "Fine. You look terrible. Absolutely awful." Grace laughed, that warm, genuine laugh that did strange things to Daniel's chest. "Better," she said. "Now let's go before we're late." The community center was packed. Chairs had been set up in neat rows, every one of them filled. Banners hung from the ceiling, hand-painted by local school children. A makeshift stage stood at the front, decorated with ribbons and flowers, and on that stage, waiting nervously, stood Detective Laura Vance. She caught Daniel's eye as he entered with the Fairbanks family and gave a small nod. Everything was ready. The ceremony began at exactly 2 o'clock. Mayor Catherine Blake took the podium first, a silver-haired woman in her 60s who had been running Whispering Pines for longer than most people could remember. "Friends, neighbors, and guests," she began, "we're here today to honor extraordinary courage. The kind of courage that doesn't wear a cape or carry a badge. The kind that lives in the hearts of ordinary people who choose to do the right thing even when it's hard. Even when it's dangerous." She paused, her eyes finding the front row where the Fairbanks family sat. 1 month ago, 2 7-year-old children walked into a winter storm to save a man they barely knew. They faced armed criminals. They endured freezing temperatures. They nearly died. The room was silent. But they didn't give up, because they understood something that many adults forget, that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that someone else's life is more important than our fear. She smiled. Today, we honor Ethan and Emma Fairbanks, and their remarkable companion, Ranger. The applause was thunderous. Ethan went red. Emma hid her face against her mother's arm. Ranger, sitting at their feet in a bright new vest, wagged his tail. Mayor Blake gestured for the children to join her on stage. They walked forward slowly, holding hands, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and pride. Grace's eyes filled with tears as she watched them, her babies, her impossible brave babies. Vance stepped forward with 2 small boxes. "Ethan and Emma Fairbanks," she said, her voice formal but warm, "for exceptional bravery in the face of danger, for selfless action that saved the life of a law enforcement officer, and for demonstrating the highest ideals of courage and compassion, you are hereby awarded the Junior Citizen Medal of Honor." She pinned the medals on their chests, small gold circles with ribbons of blue and white. Emma touched hers with wonder. "It's so shiny." The crowd laughed. "You earned it," Vance said quietly. "Both of you." Then she turned to Ranger. The German Shepherd had been watching the proceedings with patient attention, his ears up his eyes, tracking between the children and the crowd. "And now," Vance continued, "for a very special recognition." She pulled out a third box larger than the others and opened it to reveal a medal emblazoned with a silver paw print. Ranger for valor above and beyond the call of duty, for protecting those in your care at the cost of your own safety, and for demonstrating that heroism knows no species, you are hereby awarded the K9 Civilian Medal of Honor. She knelt down and clipped the medal to Ranger's vest. The dog's tail wagged furiously. Emma threw her arms around his neck. "You're a hero, Ranger, an official hero." The crowd was on its feet now, applauding, cheering, some of them crying. Daniel watched from his seat, his heart full to bursting. This was what his father had fought for, what he had died for. Not justice in the abstract, but moments like this, communities coming together, children being celebrated for their courage, love winning over fear. It was worth it. All of it was worth it. Mayor Blake raised her hands for quiet. "And now," she said, "I'd like to invite Sergeant Daniel Harrow to the stage." Daniel's stomach dropped. He hadn't expected this. Grace squeezed his hand. "Go on." He walked to the stage on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. The crowd parted for him, faces he recognized and faces he didn't. All of them watching with something that looked like respect. When he reached the podium, Mayor Blake stepped aside. "Sergeant Harrow has asked to say a few words," she said, "and to make a very special announcement." Daniel gripped the podium. His prepared speech had vanished from his mind. All that remained was the truth. "6 weeks ago," he began, his voice rough, "I was left for dead in the mountains, shot, bleeding, alone. I had given up. I was ready to die." The room was completely silent. And then 2 children found me, 7 years old, armed with nothing but a flip phone, their grandfather's pocket knife, and more courage than I had ever seen in my life. He looked at Ethan and Emma still standing on stage, their medals gleaming. "They saved my life. Not because they were trained, not because they were prepared, but because they refused to walk away from someone who needed help." His voice broke. He took a moment to compose himself. "I spent 2 years running from my grief, hiding from my pain, telling myself that if I just kept moving, kept working, kept fighting, eventually the hole inside me would fill itself." He shook his head. "It doesn't work like that. I learned that the hard way." Grace's hand found Helen's. Both women were crying. "But these children, and their grandmother and their mother and their stubborn, impossible dog, they taught me something I had forgotten. Something my father tried to tell me before he died." Daniel pulled the cassette tape from his pocket and held it up. He said, "The badge means nothing if you're too afraid to use it when it matters." And he was right, but I've added something to that. He paused. "The badge means nothing if you don't have people to protect, people to come home to, people who make the fight worth fighting." He looked at the Fairbanks family, all of them, from Helen's weathered smile to Emma's tear-streaked face to Ethan's fierce, proud eyes. "I found those people in the most unexpected way possible, and I'm not letting them go." The crowd erupted. When the noise finally died down, Daniel cleared his throat. "Which brings me to the announcement." He gestured to Vance, who stepped forward with a folder. "Starting next month, Whispering Pines will be launching a new initiative, the Young Guardians program. It will teach children basic first aid, wilderness safety, emergency response, and the value of community service." He smiled. "The program will be named in honor of 2 very special 7-year-olds who reminded us all that heroes don't need a minimum age requirement." More applause. Ethan was grinning now. Emma was bouncing on her toes. "And I will be leading it personally," Daniel continued, "because I've officially transferred out of undercover work. From now on, my job is to train the next generation of everyday heroes." He looked at the children, starting with these 2. After the ceremony, the crowd mingled in the community center, eating cake and drinking punch and sharing stories. Children ran between the tables. Adults clustered in groups, talking and laughing. Daniel stood near the back, watching it all, feeling more at peace than he had in years. Grace found him there. "You made quite a speech," she said. "I may have gotten a little carried away." "It was perfect." She stepped closer. "Daniel, I need to tell you something." "Okay." "I got a job offer." She took a breath. "The County Emergency Services Department. They want me to be a dispatcher. Part-time, flexible hours, decent pay." Daniel's face lit up. Grace, that's amazing. There's more. She bit her lip. They offered it because of you, because of your recommendation. You didn't tell me you... I may have made a few calls. Daniel, you were a park ranger for 7 years. You know these mountains better than anyone. You know how to stay calm in a crisis. You know how to guide people through emergencies. He shrugged. I just pointed that out to the right people. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Why? She whispered. Why do you keep doing things like this for us? Daniel reached out and took her hand. Because you're my family, he said simply. And that's what family does. Grace stared at him. For a long moment she didn't speak, didn't move. Then she stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't a long kiss, or a dramatic one, just a soft, simple press of lips that said more than words ever could. When she pulled back, Daniel was staring at her like she had just grown wings. Mom kissed Sergeant Daniel. They both spun around. Emma was standing 3 feet away, her eyes huge, her medal swinging on her chest. Ethan! She screamed. Mom kissed Sergeant Daniel! Oh no! Grace groaned. Within seconds, both twins were there along with Helen and what felt like half the town. It's about time, Helen declared. I was starting to think you two would dance around each other forever. Grandma, Grace's face was crimson. What, I'm old. I don't have time for dancing. Ethan tugged on Daniel's sleeve. Does this mean you're staying for real? Daniel crouched down to the boy's level. Yeah, buddy. I'm staying for real. Like forever. Like forever. Ethan considered this. Then he stuck out his hand. Okay, but you have to promise. Daniel shook the small hand solemnly. I promise. And you have to teach me more rescue knots. Done. And you have to come to my birthday party next month. Wouldn't miss it. And... Ethan hesitated. And maybe sometimes when it's not weird, you could... Tuck me in. Daniel's throat tightened. He pulled the boy into a hug. Anytime, he whispered. Anytime you want. Emma wiggled into the hug. Me too. You too. Ranger pushed his nose between them, demanding inclusion. And you ridiculous dog. They stayed like that for a long moment, a tangled mess of arms and fur and love. Helen watched from the side, tears streaming freely down her face. Grace moved to stand beside her. You okay, Mom? I'm perfect. Helen wiped her eyes. Absolutely perfect. 1 week later, Daniel showed up at the Fairbanks apartment with a box under his arm. What's that? Emma asked, eyeing it suspiciously. Something for the family. He set it on the kitchen table. But first, I need to talk to your grandmother. Helen looked up from her knitting. Oh. Daniel sat across from her, his expression serious. I've been thinking about something, he said. Something important. I'm listening. You gave me your husband's badge, a piece of your family's history. I want to do the same. He reached into the box and pulled out a worn wooden frame. This is my father's service portrait. It was taken the year before he died. He handed it to Helen. She studied the photo, a young man in uniform, with Daniel's eyes and Daniel's stubborn jaw smiling at the camera like he had all the time in the world. He looks like you, she said softly. He was better than me, braver, kinder. Daniel's voice caught. But I think he would have loved being part of this family, if he could see what I see. Helen looked up at him. What do you see? A second chance. Daniel's eyes were bright. For all of us. Helen set down the photo and reached for his hands. Your father raised a good man, she said. A man worthy of this family. Never doubt that. From the doorway, Emma's voice rang out. What's in the rest of the box? Daniel laughed, the tension breaking. Get your brother. This is for everyone. The twins gathered around the table. Grace emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Even Ranger patted over, curious. Daniel reached into the box and pulled out a piece of paper. This, he said, is a proposal for something I've been thinking about for a while. He unfolded the paper and laid it flat. It was a hand-drawn design for a house. Simple lines, careful labels. A front porch with room for a rocking chair. A backyard with space for a dog to run. 4 bedrooms, 1 for each of them. I know it's not much, Daniel said quickly. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but I found this land out by the old miller's property and I thought maybe someday. He trailed off, suddenly nervous. The room was silent. Then Ethan grabbed the paper and held it up to the light. This room says Ethan's room, he announced. And this one says Emma's room, Emma added, crowding next to her brother. There's a dog door, Ethan continued. An actual dog door. And a workshop for Grandma's crafts. And a big kitchen for Mom. They looked at Daniel with shining eyes. You really want to build a house for us? Ethan asked. With us, Daniel corrected. I want to build a house with you, all of us, together. Grace's hand found his under the table. Daniel, this is too much, too fast. I know I'm sorry, I just thought, it's perfect. She squeezed his hand. It's absolutely perfect. Helen nodded slowly, her eyes on the design. There's a garden plot marked here. I remembered you mentioned wanting to grow tomatoes. Tomatoes and peppers, maybe some herbs. Then we'll add herbs. Helen's smile was radiant. I think, Sergeant Harrow, you may have finally earned the right to call me Mom. Daniel's heart stopped. Really? Don't let it go to your head. The room erupted in laughter and hugs and excited planning. Emma started listing all the things she wanted in her room. Ethan demanded a treehouse. Ranger barked at the excitement, his tail a blur. And Daniel sat in the middle of it all, surrounded by chaos and love and impossible joy. This was what his father had died for. This was what Lily had wanted for him. This was home. 6 months later, the house stood on the hill overlooking Whispering Pines. It wasn't fancy, wasn't big, but it was theirs. Daniel put the last nail in the porch railing and stepped back to admire his work. The twins had helped with the painting mostly by getting more paint on themselves than the walls, and Grace had spent weeks choosing exactly the right curtains for each window. Helen's rocking chair sat in the corner of the porch right where she had always wanted it. It's done, Daniel said, almost not believing it. Grace slipped her arm through his. It's beautiful. It's home. She leaned her head on his shoulder. When I met you, you were bleeding to death in the snow. I never imagined we'd end up here. Life is funny like that. Funny is one word for it. And the twins burst through the front door, Ranger at their heels. Can we do the thing now? Emma bounced with excitement. Can we? What thing? Daniel asked innocently. You know what thing? The thing we've been planning. Ethan pulled a small wooden sign from behind his back. Hand-painted in careful letters, it read, The Harrow Fairbanks Family. We made it ourselves, he said proudly. Grandma helped. Helen appeared in the doorway, leaning on her cane, smiling. I merely supervised. Daniel took the sign with trembling hands. Harrow Fairbanks. One family, forged from tragedy, bound by love. Where should we put it? Emma asked. Daniel looked at the post by the front gate, the one he had sanded and primed and left deliberately empty. Right there, he said, where everyone can see it. Together, all 5 of them with Ranger supervising, they mounted the sign. When it was done, they stood back to admire it. Perfect, Grace whispered. Perfect, the twins echoed. Daniel couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his eyes too full. Helen touched his arm gently. Your father would be proud, she said, and so would my husband. They're watching, you know, both of them. You think so? I know so. She patted his cheek. Now come inside. Dinner's almost ready, and those children need to wash their hands. The family filed into the house, their house leaving Daniel alone on the porch for a moment. He looked at the sign, at the mountains rising behind the property, at the first stars appearing in the evening sky. Then he pulled 2 things from his pocket, his father's cassette tape and Helen's husband's firefighter badge. He held them both for a long moment, feeling the weight of legacy, of sacrifice, of love that transcended death. I did it, Dad, he whispered. I kept fighting, just like you asked. The wind stirred the trees. Somewhere a bird sang, and Daniel Harrow, survivor, protector, father in all the ways that mattered, went inside to join his family. Emma's notebook sat open on the kitchen table. Daniel glimpsed it as he passed a new drawing still wet with paint. It showed a house on a hill, a family standing in front of it, a dog with a medal around his neck, and above them all two figures with wings, one wearing a police uniform, one wearing firefighter gear, watching over them. The caption read, "Our family, and the angels who brought us together." Daniel picked up the notebook and stared at the drawing for a long time. Then he carried it to the mantel and propped it next to the framed photo of his father and the folded flag from Helen's husband's funeral. 3 generations of heroes. One family. "Dad." Ethan's voice came from the doorway. "Are you coming? Mom says dinner's ready." "Dad." The word hit Daniel like a wave. Ethan had never called him that before. "Did you just—" Ethan shrugged, suddenly shy. "Is that okay, Emma? And I talked about it. We thought maybe, if you wanted—" Daniel crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled the boy into a fierce hug. "It's more than okay," he said, his voice rough. "It's everything." Ethan hugged him back, thin arms squeezing with surprising strength. "Good, because Emma's already been calling you Dad in her diary." Daniel laughed through his tears. "Of course she has." They walked to the dinner table together, father and son, in all the ways that mattered. The family gathered around the table, heads bowed. Helen said grace. She thanked God for the food, for the home, for the family assembled. She thanked him for second chances and stubborn children and dogs who didn't know how to give up. And then she thanked him for the men who weren't there for George Harrow, who had died seeking justice, and for her own husband, who had died saving lives. "May we be worthy of their sacrifice," she finished. "Amen." "Amen," the family echoed. Then the food was passed and the laughter began, and the conversation flowed like it had been happening for years. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, but inside the house on the hill there was only warmth. Later that night, after the dishes were done and the children were in bed, Daniel stood on the front porch with Grace. They watched the snow fall in the light from the windows. "Scared?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted. "Every single day." "Of what?" "Losing this. Waking up and finding out it was all a dream." He turned to look at her. "I've lost everything before. I don't know if I could survive it again." Grace took his hand. "You won't have to find out," she said, "because we're not going anywhere. Not the kids, not Mom, not me." She squeezed his fingers. "We're your family now, Daniel Harrow, and we don't give up on family." Daniel pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I love you," he said. The words came out easier than he expected. "I love all of you." "We love you too." Grace smiled against his chest. "Even when you leave your boots in the hallway." "I'm working on that." "No, you're not." "No," he agreed. "I'm not." They stood there in the falling snow, holding each other, watching their breath mist in the cold air. And Daniel Harrow finally understood what his father had tried to tell him all those years ago. The badge wasn't what made you a hero. Love was. Choosing to stay when everything in you screamed to run. Choosing to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Choosing to build something beautiful from the ashes of everything you had lost. That was heroism. That was courage. That was family. And as the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white, Daniel made one final promise, not to his father, not to himself, but to the 2 children sleeping upstairs, and the woman in his arms, and the grandmother who had given him her blessing. He would never leave them. He would never stop fighting for them. He would love them until his last breath and beyond. Because that was what heroes did. And that was what he had finally become. Not by dying for what he believed in, but by living for the people he loved. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder and lightning. They come quietly in the form of 2 small hands reaching out to a dying stranger. They come in the shape of a wounded dog who refuses to stop fighting. They come through the stubborn faith of a grandmother who never stopped believing, and a mother who learned to hope again, and a man who finally found his way home. This story was never about a policeman lying dying in the wilderness. It was about what happens when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. It was about courage that has no age limit. It was about love that refuses to let go. And it was about a family broken healing, perfectly imperfect, that proved the impossible was just another word for not yet. The Harrow Fairbanks family still lives in that house on the hill. The Young Guardians program has trained over 200 children. Ranger still limps when it rains, but he hasn't stopped protecting his family. And every night before bed, Ethan and Emma look at the drawing on the mantle and whisper goodnight to the angels watching over them. Because some stories don't end. They just become part of who we are. And this story of twins and their dog and the impossible choice they made on a frozen November morning will live on forever. In the hearts of everyone who hears it. In the lives of everyone it touches. In the quiet, stubborn hope that tomorrow somewhere another ordinary person will choose to do the right thing. And the impossible will happen again. Because heroes aren't born. They're made one brave choice at a time.